Welcome to the Building Web3 Podcast. Today, I'm my good friend Karan. He is the co-founder at Arithmic. Before we get too deep into Arithmic, give us a brief background into yourself. How'd you come into this Web3 world?
Hi, Jax. Thanks for having me. I've been in the blockchain space since 2016, 2017. Started out building at the protocol level for a project called XDC. Project went on to do very well. Since then, have had the opportunity to work on all levels of the stack, of the blockchain stack, whether it's the app level, the dApp level, payment gateways, whether it's at the protocol level. The heart has always been in building at the protocol level, right? Building at the core of the blockchain tech stack. And I've always struggled whenever I was building anything in the blockchain space with a lot of technical limitations. And about 3.5 years ago, I got into proof systems. Proof systems are essentially the thing that is at the heart of zero knowledge proofs or validity rollups, the things that are at the heart of this tech. And I sort of realized that this perhaps could be a solution to certain kind of technical bottlenecks that blockchain networks face. And so I found my chief scientist, picked up some funding, and started building about 2.5 years ago. And we've been building since. And that's how everything began.
And then tell us a little bit about like what specifically you guys are building. What's the mission, the goal?
So essentially we're building a layer that allows for decentralization, liquidity, and security to L1 and L2 networks. But we focus on L2 networks more. I'll sort of expand a bit on what that means. Blockchain networks have an inherent challenge in becoming decentralized. So if you see the trajectory of how Ethereum and blockchain became decentralized, or how Ethereum and Bitcoin were able to have so many people run their nodes and so many people have access to Bitcoin and Ethereum, it took about a decade. And it took a very stable issuance and distribution model. The issuance of the token and then the distribution of the token. Networks today, especially on the L2 front, while they do issue tokens, they don't have this stable issuance and distribution mechanism. So you'll find that they are very centralized, siloed, the liquidity is very fractured. So what we do is we bring decentralization, we bring liquidity, and we bring scale to L2s and L1s. And I'll tell you how we do it in a bit.
No, I get into it right now. Let's hear how you guys accomplish that.
Sure. So what we allow for is a particular kind of restaking. So we allow retail or institutional stake to come and get married to infrastructure providers. And in this case, infra providers are actually entities and people who run nodes, servers, etc. We combine this stake with these infra providers. These infra providers then secure our network, and we extend this to other L1s and L2s. So staking happens on our network and restaking of that liquidity on other networks. So now, there's another thing that we do. We allow for a basket of different tokens and currencies to be staked and restaked. So what this allows for is a large number of infra providers to come and run nodes of our network, other networks, so providing a kind of technical decentralization. And it allows for different networks to issue their own tokens and currencies against this activity to a large number of people and to retail, right? Because retail stake and retail stake gets yield paid back. So now at once you have decentralization, you have kind of fixed your issuance and distribution model. And so this layer helps bring all three.
And let's talk about the life of a transaction. Let's imagine I'm a retail user. I have some cryptocurrency, I have like Ethereum, I have USDC, and I'm interested in using your guys' chain. So walk me through how it looks from a retail perspective, and then we'll go into how it looks from more of an institutional perspective.
Great question. So, if you've seen delegated staking pools, right? Lido, Rocket Pool, whatever, uh, and how they're able to stake on Ethereum and restake through Eigenlayer, etc. It's similar to that, except you're not staking and restaking on Ethereum, but you're staking and restaking on layer two. For our users who do bring Ethereum, we do stake and restake on Ethereum via a few different infra providers. But the fundamental shift in understanding what we do or why this is valuable is understanding that there is a lot of computation that happens on layer two, and that computation has to be secured. And this activity provides security for that security, as in computation for that activity, and generates yield for users and infra providers.
And then let's talk about like is the benefit similar to like something like Blast? Is it's hey, there's native yield. You bring whatever tokens you have, whatever thing you have on network, and it's just going to be automatically staked for you. Or talk to us a little bit about like how this is beneficial.
Yes and no. So Blast, we look at Blast and other L2s like Blast as wrapper L2s. So essentially they have they build around a core, maybe the op stack, or they'll build around one of the validity rollups like Cairo or Polygon, etc. We've built out our own validity stack, our own ZK stack. We've built it out on Lasso and Jolt. You may have come across this proof system, which it's a new kind of proof system. And from our perspective, it's the proof system of the future. It's the most performant, it's the most secure. And I think that over the next couple of months, you'll see more projects actually building out on Lasso and Jolt. Right? So that's what we use to build out our own proof system. And so we distinguish between, to answer your question more directly, we distinguish between wrapper L2s, which are essentially building around other infra L2s, and proper infra L2s who have their own ZK capabilities, their own VM. In our case, we have our own compiler. We support a bunch of different languages, etc. However, the native restaking part is native staking and restaking part is similar. So as people are bridging and depositing into our network, we natively stake and restake. Based on the staking, restaking primitives, if there are DeFi applications that are built on our partner networks, that we support.
And then let's talk about how this like restaking actually functions. Is it you guys are using like a intense and then that's taking care of some of the cross chain staking, or how like from a technical perspective is it working?
So there are two paths to it that I'll draw your attention to. One is that the staking activity that happens on our network generates yield in our tokens. And then restaking happens on the target networks of the tokens that are deposited into the multi-chain staking pool. So whether it's Matic, whether it's Berachain, whether it's any other layer 2 or layer 1, their target chains that pay for security, yield is generated in their tokens. And of course, there are certain tokens that don't have natural yield, like BTC. For that, we have partner relationships where networks and subnetworks can be secured and staked against, and then they generate yield in a different token.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And there's a lot of competition amongst the L2s. It seems like almost every day, especially in like the super chain and places that new L2s are being rolled out. So talk to us a little bit about like the competitive landscape and how you guys are looking to kind of grow your chain amongst a lot of other L2s.
So we don't look at ourselves as competition for L2s. We don't want to compete for the same kind of transactional pie, in the sense we're not competing for a bunch of transactions that have been rolled out and then put on Ethereum, etc. That's not what we're trying to do. We're trying to help the entire L2 and certain parts of the L1 ecosystem to get decentralized in the right way and to get liquidity and security in the right way. So we look at them essentially as potential partners.
And then what are some of the like challenges? Is it you guys are trying to get on more partners? Is it more developers need to build? Like what are some of the things you guys need to do to move forward?
Yeah, because the core of our protocol is validity. It's a validity slash ZK rollup. It's always challenging to build that tech out. It's very long cycles. And when we started building out, we actually built out a version of Stark, and we realized that Stark, the Stark protocol is not really going to scale, especially in the VM direction, um, and even less on the EVM direction. So we had to sort of put that aside, or let me put it a different way. For certain use cases, that works well, but for our use case and the use case of having like a VM EVM, it's better to use Lasso and Jolt. So it takes effort to build out these protocols. It takes effort to build out teams that can build out this protocol. So for us, we had to build out like a research team which had math and computer science skill sets, then applied researchers, and then production engineers. That took a bit to figure out and to establish, but now we have that process going. And now we actually produce primary research as well.
So you guys are producing research, you're building. What's kind of the stage of the L2 at this point?
So I'd say the staking layer, staking and restaking layer, that is Arithmic. We are so technically we are very comfortable on the testnet and mainnet side. Essentially, we are sort of trying to see when we should go live. With the testnet, we are looking at about a month and a half for us to go live. And for the mainnet, because it requires a bunch of partnerships, etc., that activity is ongoing. So that will come post the testnet.
Awesome. And could you share any like notable partnerships you guys are working on? Is there like a specific chains or specific, you mentioned EigenLayer earlier, like who are you guys working with?
So we're trying to build partnerships, and we've been having a bunch of discussions with a few chains. We've target L2 chains and certain L1 chains, so Polygon, Chain, etc. And of course, we are also talking to EigenLayer because we have a very interesting. So we don't look at EigenLayer as something as a competitor or someone who's doing something similar to what we do, but we have great synergies with EigenLayer. So not only can the Ether staking, restaking, LST staking, restaking happen through EigenLayer, but we can extend EigenLayer and EigenLayer functionality to L2s as well. So that's something that we've been discussing with them.
And in order for you guys to be successful, or like Web3 to be successful in general, like talk to us about some of the things that you think need to change in the ecosystem to really push things forward.
There are some things that you can control and some things you cannot. A narrative driven, I mean, crypto is very narrative driven, and layer twos and ZK tech takes a long time to build. And so there's a mismatch there. So, I mean, you can start building at the tip of the narrative cycle, but by the time you're done building, it's like a year has gone by or a year and a half has gone by, the narrative has changed. So I think so building a ZK or validity on that layer, that challenge will always exist, right? And I think that good builders and people who are dedicated to building on that layer should not get distracted. For example, we had to be very disciplined and not get distracted building on that, right? A huge challenge that affects layer twos, right? So there's this question about whether layer twos should be centralized or whether they should be decentralized. I'll explain a bit why they can be centralized and it's still fine, right? The reason is that ZK and validity rollups can kind of remain centralized if the state is maintained in the right way and the state is tied to Ethereum or state is tied to another L1. And then as the state changes, you execute the protocol in the right way. But that is sorry, um, but that is a theoretically clean picture. But when you build out these systems, you have individuals running infrastructure, meaning the servers and nodes that actually run the protocol, right? Then you have token models that are coming into L2. So all of these things make that we can be centralized and still okay. It sort of compromises that picture. And so now if you try to sort of mimic L1 networks and other L1 networks on L2 as well, now you have to start thinking about decentralization. You have to think about issuance. You have to think about distribution. All of them have a token now. But because you're running, let's say you set up an L2 and you're running your proof of stake consensus or you're running some kind of consensus and you're doing your centralized sequencing, and then you're doing your proving, your validation, etc., and verification, right? And now you issue your token. So now, because your infrastructure is centralized, you have your token, you've minted it, you've created it. How do you get it in the hands of people? There's no activity that you're really doing that gets it into the hands of people. So you can't issue and distribute in the right way. So what happens? You have your airdrop activity, or some people are buying like small private sales, etc. And then you have to lock that up on your network. So now your network has like 80%, 90% lockup of your own token. And then you hope and you sit and wait for a diverse pool of liquidity to go through your L2 because you are trying to be a rollup for Ethereum and many tokens associated with the L2s, right? So there's this huge inertia that hits all L2s.
And then in order for like we're very focused on like builders in the space and like trying to get more mass adoption of like retail adoption, not just like, hey, people buy our token, yay. More like, hey, we want more people on crypto rails. So talk to us a little bit about like some of the use cases you're seeing. A big kind of grenade lob the space is offered in that there's no good apps, or like that, like even though that we have Farcaster, it's not competing well with X. Like talk to us a little bit about like where you see kind of crypto adoption, and if you see like how you guys contribute.
I think one good direction that I'm seeing happening is in the RWA space, where there's a lot of institutional structures, instruments, relationships that are being built with blockchain, with the crypto world, right? Um, this RWAs in that direction of integrations are ideas are not new. They've been around for 8 years almost, right? But this year we've seen insane momentum there. I think the numbers are up. At the beginning of the year, I think they were around 300, 400 million, maybe a little bit more. But now those numbers have touched 10 billion.
Mm-hmm.
So I see a lot of very core financial instruments and new kinds of financial instruments built on real world stuff coming into blockchain via this institutional route. And if you think about it, this institutional route is essentially one level removed from new retail or retail that's coming in through this layer, right? And perhaps that will bring um, some kind of regulatory balance as well because they'll push in some direction. However, those networks are also very splintered, scattered, not really there with the full tokenization thing. I think that is a good direction. I think that there is so much infra play is very big now. So there are many infra players around, and the narratives are changing fairly quickly. And so with low direct retail liquidity and volume and interest, and a bunch of infra providers, and if I can be honest, a lot of very complicated DeFi things being built on top of it, this may create a barrier for a lot of people to enter and do the things that we hope that they do.
Yeah, I foresee a vision where a lot of this stuff is in the background. Maybe maybe my mom is using a credit card, and there's like an Aave self-repaying loan on the back end where it's like, hey, we're building better solutions, and maybe retail doesn't need to be knowledgeable. Like just like my mom doesn't know that she's using MongoDB when she goes to a website, that it just happens in the background. So yeah, it's a very interesting space we're all in. So let's talk a little bit about, let's say you couldn't build Arithmic. What kind of opportunities do you think are really, because we have a lot of builders that watch the show and I always like to give them some startup ideas. So if you couldn't work on Arithmic, what do you think is a great place to build these days?
I think there's some, so restaking and staking is very big. And I think building out some DeFi activity on restaking on for L2s. I'm going to first talk about things that are adjacent to what we do, right?
Yeah.
I always think of staking, or rather, how I've been talking about securing a network, providing computation. Essentially, what that means is people running nodes participating in network activity and therefore being compensated for participating in network activity, right? So they're coming and they're doing something for the network and they're getting paid for doing that, right? And if you look at L1 and L2, L1 has, let's say, 1x or whatever computational activity that happens there. L2 is already huge. It's like 22x. So if for that 1x securing of that computation, you have such a large staking restaking economy, imagine what can be built for L2, where there's so much more transactional throughput. And so I think that DeFi plays on this activity have huge potential. And now with institutional money coming in, and let's say there's institutional money coming in, let's say there are DeFi projects and protocols that are able to take that institutional money and they're able to have like very stable returns, yield, whatever. Some parts less stable, some parts more stable. Uh, that can be quite lucrative from my perspective. You
Yeah,
know,
when we had the one of the main like growth people at Bedrock, they talked about obviously restaking and staking, and they talked about a startup idea for it was almost like a risk assessment dashboard to kind of grade out the restaking and like which counterparty risk you're taking on. I thought that was kind of interesting.
yeah, these kinds of things will be built for LRTs, LSTs, because here you have the same liquidity being restaked multiple times. And so risk assessment is necessary. And so there's like all kinds of very interesting things, reporting, compliance. And tomorrow we'll have to sit and see what the regulators say with respect to staking and restaking. What does it look like for them? Today, maybe not so much attention is being paid to that, but
Mhm.
tomorrow, perhaps a layer of taxation will come in. I don't want to jinx all of us,
Let's
but
hope not.
so,
so so talk to us a little bit about like what you guys like if you have any advice for founders in the space. Clearly you're very bullish on the space you're building, like where our goal is always to get more builders into the space. Talk to us a little bit about like what kind of advice you would have for founders trying to either enter into web3 or taking on like building some kind of new project here.
I always feel that once you sort of go through parts of the process, whether it's the building process, whether it's a partnership process, whether it's a fundraising process, you kind of understand that you have to operate like a machine and you have to be like on a schedule, on a timeline. But before you do that, you're sort of in this nebulous space as to, okay, what is it that we should do? How should we do it? And then so execution suffers. So I'd say that talking to people who've been through this entire process for whether because you've got to do all three, right? You've got to do your building, you've got to do your partnerships, you've got to do your fundraising. All three you need to do. And fundraising in the blockchain space is different from fundraising in other spaces. So the VCs are looking at different things. Their cycles are different. The larger market cycles are different. So I, my advice to people would be to talk to as many people as possible, especially people who have like been through this entire process. And of course, it takes a lot of thinking, a lot of reading, a lot of understanding where fundamental value is. This is for people who are like interested in building like good projects, good networks,
Yeah,
etc.
of course, of course. And did you have any tips, because you mentioned fundraising can be a little tricky? Do you have any tips for people on like how you've approached fundraising?
So I would say that it shouldn't be rushed. It should be it should be planned in a particular way and executed over a small period of time. Uh, a lot of feedback has to be collected before you even get into that cycle as to what exactly will get funded and whether what you're building has the potential to get funded. Um, and uh, it's it's messy. It's not always clean. Uh, and VCs also have sort of their own groups and networks, etc. So
Mm,
once you start talking to groups, they move together, they assess together. Um, Tech due diligence, the financial due diligence, all of this should be clean, in my opinion. Structure should be clean. So these are things that have to be prepared for before you actually start the fundraising activity. And sometimes building takes a lot of time, fundraising also takes a lot of time. Um, Going slow on the fundraising side means that period of time will increase where you're doing the fundraising. And if that increases, then that actually reduces your chances of closing a round.
mhm.
So this is something that has to be balanced. So some
Absolutely.
people have to be purely dedicated to the fundraising activity.
That makes complete sense. And then let's talk a little bit about where people can, find out more about you guys. Like we've got builders here and they're obviously looking for ecosystems to build on. Is there anything you guys like incentivize builders with, or like how are you guys kind of getting builders to come and try out?
Yeah, so we have so for builders before the testnet, on the testnet, and post the testnet, we have like very lucrative um, to very lucrative sort of points. So our point system works differently, but a very lucrative, I would say, grants as well as incentivizations for building, their protocols, etc., on top
Mhm.
of us or on our partner networks, right? And because we're EVM compatible, it's much easier for them to sort of port over whatever they've built. But we do what is conventional in the industry, which is the grant stuff, the incentives, incentivization, etc., and whatever handholding is necessary, so that development cycles are minimized, their bandwidth is minimized.
And what would you say is from like a DApp perspective, what would you say is the biggest need? Like if there's a builder out there, it's like, yeah, I'm ready. I want to build.
Mm, I think identity is useful. Maybe a ZK identity layer that does identity stuff, but still anonymity is maintained. Um, a clean wallet with restaking experience. I think that is
Mhm.
something that might be. I mean, we have solvers today, solvers, and these uh, algorithms that do this fancy stuff, but maybe not on L2. So that would be good to see. Um, I think data. So I think that on a fundamental level, not just on the DApp level, I know you asked for DApp, but like very simple data solutions. Those could like boring, simple data solutions for crypto for Web3. That would be
Like
very nice.
data is in dashboards or data is in data availability, or what do you?
Oh, I meant just data availability, but dashboards are also great. That also is would be very nice. Like have clean, nice chain data instead of us having to go through like 10 dashboards to find like the metrics that we want and still not
Yeah.
sure whether what we're looking at is accurate or not. That also would be very nice. But I
Yeah,
do mean data availability as well.
got it. Well, check out our friends at Zero Gravity. We're quite close with their team. Although I think who we just interviewed that also does data availability at Vail. So yeah, I pick favorites because I like the team at Zero G. But guys, there are many great data availability solutions out there, and I actually suspect there will be consolidation in that space eventually, where like a few will win. TBD though. But finally, where can listeners learn more about you guys, get involved?
So we have our website, we have a Discord channel, we have Twitter, we have Telegram. So people can follow us on all of these. We'll soon have like a lot of announcements about what the testnet event looks like, what the mainnet event looks like. We have our white paper out. All of that can be found through our website, through Discord, etc., through Twitter even. And the team is very approachable. We love talking about ZK, layer twos, layer ones. We love talking about blockchain basically. So we're builders, passionate builders. And so, we are doing like a lot of event circuits as well. We're going to a lot of events. So catch us at these events. We were at Token last week. We'll be at DevCon. We'll be at a few others. We're planning on being at Mainnet as well, but we'll see whether travel plans can work out because we have some other stuff that's upcoming as well. And we have some very exciting announcements that we'll be coming out with soon. So I hope we are very excited about those.
Awesome. And what is the social media handles, or is there something they should look for? Or is it just at Arithmic or?
Arithmic Network for Twitter, arithmic.com for the website, and the Discord links are all on the website. The white paper links are all on the website, etc. So,
And connect with you personally?
yeah, so over Twitter or Telegram, my Telegram is Karan Bharadwaj, just my name. Okay, I know my second name is a bit challenging, but it's at Karan Bharadwaj. And so, you guys can ping me and I'll add you to Discord or Telegram or whatever.
Awesome. Perfect. Well, thank you so much for coming on here. And to everyone else, let's continue building the future of Web3.